Hey everyone, thank y'all for joining us for our Beef Brunch News Update for Tuesday, May 2nd. I'm going to go ahead and let Vince kick it off for us for our Central and South Louisiana updates.
Well, thank y'all for having me. It's always a pleasure to get on this little update and inform people of what we see going on and kind of what's going on in the industry around us. But it's looked like we're going to have a pretty good stretch of weather this week. I saw several fields with some hay laid down since probably Saturday afternoon and Sunday. Um, Hopefully that's a blessing in disguise, and we can move forward with getting some hay put up here because the ryegrass is kind of kind of finishing out, seeding and turned, and I was probably a little too far gone, but fields had been so wet, we just hadn't had an opportunity to get in them. Um, I know Lee's going to cover some marketing issues, but local market, some of our stockyards here in South Louisiana is very promising, very favorable. Um, 3 and 4 weight calves bringing well over $2 a pound, so um, it's a good time to take advantage of the market if you got some fall calves. Even at up to 500-pound range is right close to $2, if not over, depending on the quality and kind. Naturally, the uh, less favorable cattle or the lower end of cattle are not bringing what the better ones are, but it's the prices are still good with kill cows here locally where I'm sitting is a dollar right around 90 cents to a dollar, and bulls are still well over a dollar. Those that are yielding well, so it looks promising, and hopefully we can make progress and our input costs kind of soften a little bit. Fertilizer prices, blended fertilizer prices going on hay fields seem to be in that $500-600 range, a whole lot more palatable than they were last year this time in the $700-800 range. So, but there's a lot of anticipation and getting in the hay fields and getting them sprayed and fertilized. But man, we've been cool at night. We were 53, 54 degrees this morning when we got up at daybreak. That's way too cool for May the 1st. But it looks like later this week we'll be in the mid to upper 60s at night and possibly even 70 with some rain chances towards the weekend, but getting up into the middle 80s and close to 90 by Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that'll get some things moving, as Ron Strahan likes to put it. It'll get Africa hot before we want it to, and hopefully we get some grass growing. There's still a considerable amount of thin cattle out there, and just because of lack of forage growth from our cooler temperatures, and it's been relatively wet. So um, people have some foot rot problems going on. Actually, not to mention the bull that you bought coming up with a case of foot rot, but it's there's quite a bit of that going on right now. Uh, just sore feet, and I guess from the wet conditions, have cattle kind of hobbling around here. But there is some of that going on. So um, here down in South Louisiana, Central Louisiana, we got a lot of crop in our part of the world, and we've been waiting on better weather to get some crop planted. Our rice and sugarcane are subtropical type crops, and been struggling to get going. Corn crop seems to be liking it. It's more like Midwest weather here lately than it has normally is in April and May. So hopefully those guys make a good corn crop with conditions at hand. So. Um, Ashley, I think we had set a date for the Dean Lee Field Day, September 20th, is it? Or maybe
Let me look and get
you'll
back to
just
you.
yeah, okay. We'll get back to that later, huh? But we do have a fall field day coming up at Dean Lee, so keep that on your radar. If those of you who enjoy the field days in our part of the world, there will be one in September at Dean Lee, where we'll try to cover some of that. So it's 24th.
14th.
Oh, 14th. I'm sorry.
Sorry, 1-4,
Yeah,
1-4
September.
for Dean Lee, and then the 21st for the Northeast region.
Yeah. So um, that's kind of what we have going. Hopefully, we get into, like I said, a more seasonable pattern than we've been in, and get some grass growing and get some hay made. And but before we'll know it, it'll be June, and we really hadn't made any progress in the hay fields and pastures at this point in time. So I'll close with that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so the Dean Lee Field Day, thinking Vince has got me way in advance over here. The Dean Lee Beef and Forage Field Day will be on September 14th, and then the Northeast Region Beef and Forage Field Day will be a week later on September 21st. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lee, who can do a recap of our Northwest Region Beef and Forage Field Day that we had last week, and our regional update and local markets.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm glad to be with y'all today. I can't remember much about what I had for breakfast this morning, much less planning out that far to the fall. But these beef and forage field days, they really are good events, folks. It's good to come together with other cattle producers and hay producers and kind of talk over some issues and pick up on a couple of things, maybe see some friends that you hadn't seen in a while. And I think they're really important events for us in the cattle industry as a whole. We had our Beef and Forage Field Day, or Northwest Region Beef and Forage Field Day, this past Thursday at the Hill Farm Research Station. Had a really big crowd turn out for it. Had some good speakers and some good content. The weather turned out pretty good for us. It was questionable right up at the end, and but everything turned out really good. Really good lineup of speakers, and the content they delivered was really good. Speaking about this weather, boy, I tell you what, ditto goes up it this way. This is not really typical spring weather. It seems like a lot of years, we've already broached 90 and are consistently above 90 by this time of the year, but that's not the case this year. It's been unseasonably cool and and pretty wet too. I know Vince was picking on Ashley a little bit about Dean Lee bull. There's a lot of bulls going around with some foot rot problems and some feet problems. We were talking before we hit record on this thing that there's a lot of that going around. But anyway, it's starting to dry out a little bit. We're starting to get a little stretches of dry weather, if you will. Although it is forecast, rain is forecast in the future. This next weekend, I believe we got several days of high precipitation chances. Temperatures though are steadily warming just a little bit. The pastures, gosh, we're getting kind of in this transition time during this transition time we have every year where these cool season forages, they're maturing rapidly, folks, and starting to I guess play out a little bit. They're going to be becoming less and less a part of the equation from this time forward. Seeing a lot of seed heads on planted ryegrass and volunteer ryegrass. So the seed heads are coming, folks. If you don't have them, count yourself lucky for sure. Of course, I think we talked even the last news update how the cereal rye and wheat and stuff it's already made a seed head, and we know that quality and quantity is going to be rapidly declining. But once again, this is a transition period, so you're expecting the slack to be pulled by the warm season forages, grasses and forages. Well, there's a sticking point. When we're diving down into the high 40s, lower 50s on these nighttime lows, and in the days, some days we've had trouble to climb out of the 50s for highs. It's sure holding this Bermuda grass and Bahia grass back significantly. But I think we're steadily winning the battle. We just are a little bit behind. It kind of scratches your head and make you wonder. You turn around and look, and here it is, May the 1st, May the 2nd, and we're still talking about this cold weather. Just shows you how kind of different this year is. Um, there's quite a bit of baleage being cut up this way. I said baleage because I don't know if anybody's cutting anything to dry bale yet. There may be this week, but I don't know. It's been so wet in the pastures that by the time you let these pastures and hay fields dry out enough to get across them, the next rain chance is staring you down. You just don't have enough time to cure that hay for dry hay. But there is a lot of baleage being put up. I've talked to several big producers that have been hard at it. In fact, one of them is done. He covers several hundred acres of hay ground, and he's done. He's got everything wrapped up and ready to go on his next cut and growing, of course. I think by the time we visit next time for next time's market news update, I think that we'll be talking about quite a bit of dry hay being made or being in the process of being made. A lot of cattle being worked. These spring born calves, a lot of them are being worked at this time. Um, I just made a note on my little cheat sheet here. Flies becoming an issue. Starting to see quite a few flies on cattle. Now, whether or not we got to the treatment levels, I don't know. These cool nights are kind of keeping them at bay a little bit, but I think we're just a week or two away from our populations exploding, sure enough, and everything. Um, some fall calves, as Vince alluded to, hitting the market, especially those early fall born calves. You know, those calves may be born even towards the end part of August or early September, so on and so forth. They're starting to make their way on into town because of what Vince stated, and that's these high prices on these 4 weight to 5 weight calves. A lot of times, you know, we try to hold these calves and try to get them at an increased weight, but it's really saying something, folks, whenever you can pull a 425 pound steer calf off his mama's side, send it to town, and get $800 to $900. That's a lick right there, folks. Just think of how far we've come in a pretty short amount of time. Remember what these prices were back just even last fall and late summer for sure. Anyway, I've got my market report. You know, done 2 or 3 of these things now, I guess, and just a compilation of averages of market reports from within Louisiana. And this is probably the last time I'm going to give this disclaimer, but I will give it just in case. You know, we don't have an official market reporting source in Louisiana. So what I do is I take the self-reported prices, the market reports from all these individual sale barns that I can get my hands on, and most all of them post a market report. But I take all those results, I kind of compile them and get an average of ranges, folks. And so the more I do this, the more I think, well, I need to explain this a little bit more as far as where I get these numbers from. And one thing that I want to be clear about, folks, is whenever I'm giving these calf prices, we're talking about number one cattle, the top quality cattle. Now, you go to any one of these livestock markets and you'll see you'll see top quality prices on the number one type cattle, and then you may see some speckled or painted up cattle or some roping cattle or something run through the market, run through the ring and be significantly lower than what these prices that I'm going to report. So all these prices that go in the average are on number one, the best it is out there, number one cattle. Um, so, and the other note I wanted to kind of make about this is I went on ahead and went with a full meal deal this time. I've got a average of ranges on cull cow prices and on cull bulls, and went on ahead and did some averages on some bred cow sales, more of the stocker type cows and pairs. So you getting a full meal deal on this one. Your money's worth for sure. So with that being said, at 5 to 6 weight steers, the average of the ranges was $1.21 to $2.30 per pound. Highest price reported was $2.37 a pound. On the heifer side of things, 5 to 6 weight heifers, average of ranges $1.13 to $1.99, which the highest price reported was $2.05 per pound. On our cull cows and bulls, just another asterisk before I give these prices. I excluded thin cow prices on this, folks, and I threw them out the same reason why I didn't include number two quality cattle in the market report for steers or heifers. Just we know they sell some thin cows at all these auction markets. We know that they're kind of below or significantly below price. So anyway, I did throw those out just for figuring sake. So on the cull cow side of things, the average of ranges lowest price was 76 cents a pound. Average high was $1.02. highest price was $1.04. On the bull side of things, the average range of 79 cents a pound to $1.22 a pound. The highest price was $1.29. And folks, look at these prices. Look at this on these cull bulls, folks. Uh, my goodness, whenever you can pull these cull cows and bulls and get them to market and get these level of prices, my goodness, it'll make you scratch your head. Not going to jump on that train and harp on it like we have in the past, but if there was a time to cull, folks, now's the time to get rid of those open cows. Uh, on the stocker cow side of things, the numbers are a little bit different on this, but I'm gonna give it anyway. So the average ranges was $600 a head to $1,358 a head. The highest price reported was $14.25. Now that's on the bred cow side. On the pair side, lowest was $562.50. The highest range was 1468.75 with the highest price reported 18.25 per pair. Now, folks, if these numbers are off a little bit, they may be. But think about it like this. Now, you go up here and you do the math on what these 5 to 6 weight steers are bringing with these stocker cows, folks. I'd say the stocker cow market hadn't quite caught up with the calf market yet here. But a final asterisk on this, I reported these bred cow prices and these pair prices. You got to take it with a grain of salt, folks, because we're not looking at them. You just don't know, how good the cattle were that run through this past week in these sale barns. You can have some really top quality cattle that maybe weren't there that would have blown these estimates out of the water, and these estimates could come from some lower quality cattle. So anyway, that's that market report. Y'all let us know if you like it, if you don't like it, if you need me to abbreviate it or whatever we need to do on that. Um, Close out with a couple of events that are upcoming. Louisiana Tech is having their farm production sale on Saturday, May the 6th. And it's going to be right there on the south campus, the ag side of things in Ruston. They've got baldy pears, heavy breds, 15 to 18 month old exposed heifers, um, Brahman Angus F1s, Brahman Hereford F1s, Angus Cross. They're going to have finished market steers, finished market hogs, and lambs. So they got something for everybody and everybody's kitchen there. If you're interested, that's going to be on Saturday, May the 6th, there in Ruston, Tech Farm Production Sale. And also another event I want to kind of highlight here. Louisiana Angus Association is having their female sale on Saturday, May the 13th. And that's going to be at the Louisiana State Fairgrounds there in Shreveport. Look through their catalog they sent me, and my goodness, there's some good cattle in there. I expect that if you're looking for some good Angus cows, that would be the place I would start. That being said, Ashley, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Perfect, thank you. So in regards to weather and forage and fields updates, I'd like normal, I'm going to echo and ditto what both Vince and Lee have already said. We did have a couple of requests. I know some people who couldn't make it to the field day last week. Lee and I briefly talked about some of the new antibiotic rules that are going to be taking effect in June. So just as a short reminder, and we'll probably get you more information on this in the future, but as a short reminder, on June 11th, we are going to see most or all of the medically important antibiotics that are currently over the counter are going to require a prescription. So things like Tylan, oxytetracycline, penicillin, the sulfameds, gentamicin, there's several others. Those are going to now have a label on them that say prescriptions required, like all their prescription medications. So if you don't already work with a veterinarian, you need to go ahead and establish a relationship with one, because you will have to go through the vet to be able to get those antibiotics. Give me a second. I had something else I was going to say. Oh, it is possible for you to see some of those antibiotics and that new label coming out before June 11th. So they are already printing the new label. So some stores or some dealers do already have medications requiring the prescription. So if you see a bottle and it says that a prescription is required, even if it's not June 11th yet, you do still have to have a prescription to go ahead and buy that. So they're kind of rolling those out slowly. For the market reports that I have, the slaughter volumes for this past week were up. They were at 622,000 head. That's up 10,500 from the previous week, but it is decreased about 25,000 compared with the same week last year. Choice box beef closed the week at $309.30. That's an increase of $2.79 from the previous week, and a choice select spread of $20.96. That choice select spread is increased $4.24 compared to the previous week, but it is $8.39 higher than the 5-year average for the same week. So realize, y'all, we're getting into grilling season, so we know we're going to start seeing some changes there on beef. Reported in the National Weekly Direct Slaughter, the negotiated purchases report on a confirmed 83,647 head. In Texas Panhandle on Friday, the negotiated cash trading was slow with light to moderate demand. But for the week, the live purchases traded $2 lower at 173. In Kansas for the week, the live purchases traded steady to $2 lower at 173. Then in Nebraska, live purchases were ranging from 177 to 183. The bulk of that was anywhere from $2 to $5 lower. Sorry, I lost my spot. From 178 to 180. Dress purchases were trading $1 to $4 lower from 283 to 286. Then in the Western Corn Belt, live purchases traded mostly steady to $3 lower at 180, and dressed were mostly $3 lower at 285. Now on the calf prices and the cow prices, both calf and cow prices that I'm about to give, what I do and what Jason had done was average Mississippi and Oklahoma. So Lee just gave you our prices for here in Louisiana. And again, these are going to be an average from the reportings that we had from USDA for both Mississippi and Oklahoma. So your 500 to 550 pound steers, those are mediums and large, 1s and 2s, sold at an average of $232. That was up $10 from the previous week. 750 to 800 pound feeder steers, medium and large, 1s and 2s, were at an average of $188, and that was about $6 higher to the previous week. Lean cull cows, those are the thin conditioned, ended the week at 87 cents. That's steady from the previous week. Boning utility, so that's body condition scores of 5 and 6, ended the week at 94 cents. That's down roughly a penny. The breakers, so your high conditions, ended the week at 98 cents, and that was down almost 2 pennies. Moving into the feedstuffs, soybean meal was down $10.40 at $465.30. Soybean hulls decreased $40 at $145 a ton. Rice bran was steady at $200 a ton. Cottonseed meal steady at $365 a ton. Whole cottonseed down $5 at $305. Corn gluten feed meal, the 60% is down $75 at $700 a ton. DDGs are up $3.34 at $281.67. And then corn is down 43 cents a bushel at $6.53 a bushel. We don't have any big events coming up in terms of the Ag Center. Lee touched on some of the other ones that are upcoming here. Events reach way into the fall for our fall events coming up. If we have anything else coming up, we will, of course, let you know. I do want to make a note. I can't remember if we put this in the last news update or not, but we are moving away from doing the monthly webinars. Instead, what we're going to do is move to seasonal webinar series for Beef Brunch. So we'll start putting something together for this fall. If there's anything, any topics or anything that you would like for us to cover, please reach out to me and let me know. I'm always open for ideas. That job. And with that, oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. Even though we're not doing the monthly webinars, remember that we do have all those on the YouTube channel. I know Lee mentioned flies starting to get kind of rough. We do have a fly control webinar from 2020, I think, or 2021. And then I know Vince did a virtual field day video on fly control for us as well. So we have different videos floating around. They are on our livestock YouTube channel, but we also have a couple other YouTube channels for the different regions and things like that. So if we mention a video and you can't find it, or if you want to know if we have a video, please just reach out to me and I'll help you find that link. So I think that's all that I have for y'all today. Vince, Lee, do y'all have anything else to add? Okay, we'll be back with y'all in just a couple of weeks.